The same concept when it comes to talking to the right client, because not everybody, like I mentioned, not everybody that calls you can serve, and that's okay. But if you're treating every single client like I can close this client, I can close this client, I can close this client, you can't. Welcome to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This podcast is dedicated to helping overwhelmed outdoor living professionals, landscapers, and hardscapers just like you increase your closing rate to over 75% without doubling your workload so you can build a seven-figure business that doesn't need you. I'm your host, Joshua Gillow. Let's dig in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sales Made Simple podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and Brian Kaskavalsian is back on with us this week. If you missed last week, go back. He dropped a ton of gold last week. Profit is a mindset, and you're not going to make any more money till you change the way you think. And that's what we went into deep last week. So if you didn't hear that, go back and take a listen. This week, we're going to be focusing on attracting your ideal clients. We have a couple marketing strategies here that'll work for contractors to bring those ideal clients, because those ideal clients love what you do, listen to you, and they pay whatever you ask, within reason, of course. So, Brian, welcome back on.
Thanks, Joshua. Last week was fun.
It was. Yeah, we had a great time with that. So this week, our key takeaways and what I'd like the listeners to get from this is, how to define and attract ideal clients to maximize profitability. Because not everybody that calls you can serve. So it's not like because they called you, now all of a sudden you've got to drop everything and run out to them because they called you. You're afraid you're going to get a bad review, or who knows, you're just going to feel guilty because you didn't go out and listen to them, whatever it might be. Or heck, you don't answer your phone at all, right? There's a lot of problems with that. So not everybody is set up for your business, and your marketing assets should make that very clear so the right people know what they're looking for. Next is, effective digital marketing strategies specifically suited for contractors. What should you be investing in? Like what works, what doesn't work? Not into the nitty gritties, but let's get into where should you be focusing on? And then the importance of consistent branding and reputation management. It's important. It's really important. So Brian, can't wait to break this open. So what are your thoughts on some of these questions?
Where do we start? Where do you want to start? You want to start?
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. You tell me.
No. So I think of everything like I love shooting. I love shooting pistols. I grew up hunting, like all of that. So I always think of things as targets, right? And I have that mental image of going out into the woods in the first day of deer season and having my rifle. It's all sighted in, all loaded, ready to go, stand by that tree or sit by that tree for 12 hours. And the next thing you know, I put on a blindfold and I sit there next to the tree and I listen for things that come by, and I hear rustling in the leaves and the branches, and I hear crashing. I'm like, that must be a deer. And I just start shooting all over the place. Right. I say that because it's ridiculous, right? But that's how most of us run our businesses. And I say that because that's how I ran my business for years.
Oh my God, Joshua. I thought you were serious. I thought I'm listening to this. And you know what? I immediately thought of the movie The Bodyguard with Kevin Costner at the end, where he closes his eyes to listen for where the person is because he can't see him.
Yeah.
He closes his eyes so it heightens all of his other senses, and he gets the guy. That's where my head went.
Yeah. But, that's the opposite of what I'm trying to say.
What are you talking about? Okay, don't do that. All right, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't put on the blindfold is my point.
Got it. Okay.
And the blindfold is no more than us not knowing, right? It's the not knowing, right? And thinking that if we can just go out and just keep shooting bullets into the woods, that we'll hit that deer, right? And eventually we'll make it happen. And there's so much effort expelled during that time that doesn't ever turn into anything fruitful. So what I love to start with here is that same concept when it comes to talking to the right client, because not everybody, like I mentioned, not everybody that calls you can serve, and that's okay. But if you're treating every single client like I can close this client, I can close this client, I can close this client, you can't, right? The goal here is to understand, that's my entire premise of this episode, is to understand that once you're talking to the right person who wants what you offer and wants to be delivered it in the way that you deliver it, and that they also can afford to say yes, then we have something. So why aren't we thinking because we're all marketers, whether we like it or not, why aren't we thinking about how do we get more clients that we call them hell yes clients or ideal client avatars? Like, why aren't we focusing that? And most marketing companies are gonna be like, yeah, we'll take care of that. Who is it? Yeah, that they own a house. Okay, check. They have 2.5 kids. Check. Okay. They make $100,000 a year. Check. And that's all I get. All of a sudden you go off and there's a lot of people that fit that category that cannot say yes to you. So until you take that blindfold off, You have a perfectly sighted gun and look for the target, that deer or whatever you're shooting at. Until you have that clear, you're going to be wasting a ton of time, a ton of effort, and a ton of bullets on things
Yeah.
that aren't going to produce anything at the end. So that's what I love. The client avatars. How do we get really focused? What are some things you can share with us that get us right down to that ideal client that we know that client can say yes, they love what we have, and they can't wait to get moving with us?
Well, the one thing we know about human beings is that there are lots of versions of the same person or same people. And so how do you find them? How do you find similar people? One of the things you can do, the simplest thing you can do is just look in your database. So this requires something that a lot of business owners are either unwilling to do or they talk themselves out of doing. And that is this: stop and think. I have this strategy that I teach people. I call, again, another fancy name, the library strategy. Because where did it come out of? It came out of me escaping to a place where nobody could find me, quiet, and that nobody would bother me. And I recommend people take half a day a week and go and just think and work on your business. And one of the things that you could do is you start to look at all of your clients, put them on a map, push pin them on a map. You can do this very easily with Google Maps. Put in a spreadsheet with all the addresses and get maps. Look for clusters. Think about, okay, I have a cluster of clients here. What did these people have in common? I tell this story about when we first got married. I lived in California, and Addie moved to California. We had our kids. We raised them there until my older daughter was in 6th grade. And there was a water park in Irvine. And one day we go to this water park when the kids were little. And I noticed in the parking lot all of these Honda Odyssey minivans. Like every other car was a Honda Odyssey minivan. And I didn't think too much of it. I just noticed it. But later, I really started to think about that. And I started to think about, could I buy a list? If I owned this water park, could I buy a list of all of the people within a 30 or 40 mile radius that owned a Honda Odyssey minivan and send them a special offer to come to this water park? Now, why am I fixated on the Honda Odyssey? Well, it tells you a lot about the people that are inside of that vehicle. Same thing with neighborhoods. Same thing with, people that you do business with. Look for commonalities. What do you find common with these people? You rattled off demographics, which is smart. But as the point you were making was, it's not enough. There's also this thing called psychographics. Now, we can get super complicated with this, but to keep it really simple, it's do the Honda Odyssey. Look for the commonalities within your customer base. Do they drive a particular type of car? Do they do certain things on vacation? Are their kids a certain age? Do they read certain magazines? How do they spend their time? And you look for commonalities. You also, with neighborhoods. So if we can get into like actual tactics. So how would you use that? So now you've got this, say, cluster where you see, okay, within this area you're in Pennsylvania. I'm going to use York. My business partners are in York. So let's just use York, Pennsylvania as an example. Okay. So in York, Pennsylvania, there's this neighborhood, that neighborhood, and that neighborhood where we've done quite a bit of work. All right. So now it's like, okay, what can I do to target those neighborhoods? Because birds of a feather flock together. Chances are good that those people are all within the same kind of socioeconomic demographic.
Uh-huh.
They all have similar homes. They all have the same similar problems, whether it's outdoor living, windows, roofing, bathrooms, whatever it happens to be. They have a need. So what can you do now to get more people like that? Start to work the neighborhood. I tell people all the time when it comes to marketing, a lot of people think, well, what I have to do is, especially the smaller contractors, the ones that right now they just rely on referrals to get business, which is probably a lot of your people. They're just
Uh-huh.
relying on referrals, and they do pretty good with them. But you can't control referrals. You don't have any control in that conversation. This is stuff that's happening without you knowing about it. Now, there are ways to drive that behavior, and we can talk about that in a minute. But what we want to do is we want to get proactive. We don't want to just wait, sit around and wait. It's like, going into these retail stores and the person is just sitting waiting behind the desk for people to come in and they barely even get up when you come in. No, I want to drive people in. Okay. I want to have control. We talked about this last time. Take responsibility. You don't have leads? Look at yourself. What are you doing? Are you sitting in your office waiting? Or are you actually going out there and doing something about it? So now that we know kind of what a great customer looks like, now we got to go out and we got to get more of them. So what are some of the things that you do? You got to use yard signs.
Uh-huh.
So most of your your clients probably use yard signs, okay? But are they using them like a real estate agent does with an open house? Are you putting them at the entrance of the neighborhood? Are you doing sign or directionals that say, "Hey, we're working on a house, go here," so you could see what we're doing? With what you guys do, it's very obvious. You could see the before and after.
Uh-huh.
Are you talking to all of the neighbors around that house? Are you letting them know about what's going on? And you can do this. There's so many different ways to do this. You can do this cheap on the super cheap just by walking around dropping door hangers. We're working in your neighborhood. You may have seen our trucks. You could put a little post-it note on their front door that says something like, "We're working in your neighborhood at such and such address. If you see anything out of place, please call this number." Okay. There's, and then, okay, so now you're doing door hangers. If you want to get more sophisticated, you can do EDDM, every door direct mail. You can send out a nice big postcard or a letter that says, "Hey, we're working in your neighborhood. We're doing this and this and this for Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Elm Street. If you're interested in learning more, please call this number." Or something like, "We're working in your neighborhood. Here's a special offer because we're already here." Okay. So you can do that as the job is going on. So with your people, you're there for weeks,
Yeah.
sometimes months.
Oh, yeah.
Are you doing any progress reports? So every couple of weeks, "Hey, come by and see this. Drive by and look at this." You're like out there. You just keep dripping, dripping, dripping. You can show them before and after pictures of stuff that you've done. There's so much you can do. When the job is finished,
Mhm.
when the job is finished, you can invite all of the neighbors to come and see. You can do an open house and you can see what the job looks like. So now they start to imagine their backyard looking like this or their front yard looking like this. "Oh my God, these people built a pergola. They put in an outdoor kitchen. Oh my God, they've got a TV out here. They have fans." You mean now they can come out here in the summer and just hang out with their friends and have fun. But what do most people do? They go in with blinders on, kind of like your blindfold, but now they're going in with blinders and all they see is the house they're working on. And they're not thinking about all of the other potential business because they're too busy in their heads running from here, this fire to that fire to this fire. That's why I always tell people you have to stop and you have to take time away from your business to clear your mind, to think about strategies like this. And by the way, all of what I just said, how much did that all cost?
Very little.
Very little.
Yep.
Very little. And we can get into some other strategies that cost more money, but just that alone, that stuff alone, could that get you one more lead? Could it get one more job? I always say, especially to the small contractors, you have to have the mentality, you and everybody on your team has to have the mentality of every job turns into another job. Every job turns into another job. So whether that's through radius marketing, whether that's through referral, whether that's through doing an open house and collecting leads, whatever that happens, postcards, you know, door hangers, whatever it happens to be, every job turns into another job. Now, what about at the end of the job? Job's over. Let's say you did an open house. Let's say you didn't do an open house. Okay. What are some of the things you can do? Well, are you sending your client a gift at the end? Are you making a big deal out of them choosing you? Are you staying in touch with that customer? Are you sending a newsletter, email? Are you doing any direct mail to them? You know, I had a company, we sold it last year, but we're still involved. We're still owners, but we do relationship marketing.
Mhm.
This is what we did for 15 years, where we said, okay, when you're done with the job, your job is not now over. Your job has just begun. Now you got to make sure that that customer is thrilled, that that customer is leaving you a Google review, that customer understands you have a referral program. And now you got to stay in touch with that customer as long as you want to be in business. People would always say, well, but I already spent money to get them. You're telling me now I got to spend more money to continue to market to them? And I say, if you want to have a successful business, if you want to make the most amount of money that you can make, if you want to have high profits, you want to get in front of people that are more inclined to say yes and buy from you. Absolutely. You have to build a relationship beyond the job. See, people think that, oh, we're doing the job. And so, okay, look how great we are. No, you're only great when you've completed the job and you have done what you promised the customer you would do. That was your contract.
Mhm.
Everything above that, above and beyond, is what's going to set you apart from everybody else.
That's right.
And so when marketing, so my longtime most important mentor in my life is a guy named Dan Kennedy. And one of the first things Dan taught me about marketing was his triangle: market, message, media. Market, message, media. And so market is what we're talking about here is, who is my ideal customer? Who is my ideal customer? Make a list of what they look like. Write a story about them.
Mhm.
Now, you can only do this, though, when you're quiet. When you're away somewhere like a library where no one's going to bother you, you write it out by hand or use your computer. But write out who these people are. That's your market. That's who you're targeting. Your message is, what are you saying to your market to get them to raise their hand and say, I'm really interested in this? And then the third piece is, how am I delivering that message? What media am I using? So there's all kinds of media. There's knocking doors. There's dropping a door hanger. There's doing direct mail. There's doing digital marketing. There's doing TV. There's radio. There's all kinds of shit you can do, right? That's the media. And when all three of these things match, now you got something that's going to work. But if you deliver the wrong message to the right market, even with the greatest of media,
It's not going to work.
not going to work.
Yep.
Because you didn't say the right things.
Mhm.
And saying the right things comes from a deep understanding of who your customer is. Of who your customer is.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't have said any clearer, dude. And because if you don't know what their pain points are and you don't know what they need and you don't live in their shoes, you don't understand them that well, then you're spraying and praying. Like you got the shotgun on on your hip and you're just shooting into the distance. Like you have no target. You're just like, all right, well, I'm going to say the same thing to everybody. And that's why your closing rates are 25 or 30% because you're trying to keep the same message for everyone. And that's not the case. The riches are in the niches. You need to know those people intimately to go back and think of the last 3 people you worked with that you would love to just put them on a copy machine and copy and just paste and just keep serving the same clients over and over again, same kind of projects, and find out what that is. And to your point, are they in that Honda Odyssey? Is that what they are? If that's the case, man, I want that. And maybe that park, actually, I'm going to go back. Maybe that park actually did that. And that's why there's so many Honda Odysseys there. But but you have a perfectly good point there. If you're going to all your clients' houses, let's say they all have a Mercedes, right? I'm not a big Mercedes guy, but they have Mercedes in the garage and they have a Toyota, Mercedes and Toyota, right? And everyone has the same darn basic car brands. You're like, huh? Or they all have Ferraris, like whatever it might be. They might all just drive, Nissans. You don't know. But if you see continuity and consistency, you're like, okay, maybe your clients don't have kids. For us, the big thing is to make sure that our clients are in their forever homes because we found that people that are going to be in their house for 2 to 5 years and they're going to roll it, they're not putting that kind of money in their project. So they might have an idea to. Husband or wife might be like, I'd love to have a pool and spend 6 figures back there. I'd love to do that. And then the reality sets in at some point. We're only going to be here for 4 to 5 years. You think spending $200,000 in the backyard, we're going to get any of that back? So doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. But if we're going to be living here and the grandkids are going to be calling this home, hell yeah, we're going to do that. It's a very different motivation. So are your clients in the forever homes? Are you asking them that question? They will answer you. Yeah, we plan on being carried out of here in a box. But if they're only in it for the next 2 to 5 years or until the next work gig, they're not going to invest, even if they saw it on HGTV and can't wait to do it. They're eventually logic is going to kick in and they're going to be like, nope, sorry, this doesn't make any sense. We're going to lose money doing this. So again, to your point, you could have all the right messages, but if you're talking to the wrong people, or if you have the wrong message to the right people, it doesn't work. You've got to have that aligned. And the only way that happens is by taking the advice Brian said, is that take a half a day a week, think, go out into a special place that's quiet, a library or anywhere, even out in the woods if you need to, and just start thinking about these things and then being much more aware of what's going on around you when it comes to your kind of clients and taking the time to find that out, not just shooting at everyone like, yeah, they got money, they got a checkbook, they got a pulse, we're going. No, slow the process down, slow your sales process down, get to know them first. In our process, we teach our students, there's 3 steps before we even decide to go out and step foot on the property. There's 3 steps. You got to go through the initial call, through a questionnaire, through a 30+ minute discovery process. And if they all show up and if everything makes sense and if all the expectations are set in place and accepted and ready to move forward, only then will we actually go out and meet with the clients because we don't want to waste their time and we certainly don't want to waste our time. So the only way as an industry we get to a 75% or higher close rate is by slowing things down and talking deeper to less people. It's not a volume game when it comes to 6-figure and high ticket. It is a value and a depth game. That's how it works. Because if you're not going to connect with people, you just want their money, they smell that. They're not going to go with you. You're going to be fighting that constantly. But knowing who you're talking to, where their pain is, and how you help solve that better than anybody else. And you had an excellent point earlier, Ryan. You said, look, everybody else can give them the basics. What the real value is after the sale. When you go above and beyond their expectations, when they write that final checkout and then all of a sudden they get this really cool present that they didn't expect and they get a postcard in a year from now, how's everything going? Because those satisfied clients have the potential of offering all of that testimony to other people who are looking, because darn well at work they have friends, at church they have friends, when they're walking their dog in a neighborhood, you want them singing your praises, bro. And the only way that happens is by giving them more than they ever expected they would get.
Yeah.
That's where reciprocity lies.
Can I add one nugget
Please.
to that we discovered and we learned over the years that we essentially help people get more referrals. So one of the big mistakes people make with referrals is A, they don't ask. And B, they don't keep asking. And so what I mean by this is, so at the end of a job, that's when you should really, because that's when you've proven yourself. That's when you've earned the right to ask for a referral. However, to set it up way back at the beginning is key. And you say something like this. This was some language that we teach all of our clients at G4 when in order to set up referrals for later is you, the salesman, are going to say to these people, they've signed on the dotted line, you've got a deal. You're going to say to them, I'm going to work really hard to exceed all of your expectations. Okay. I'm going to work really hard to exceed all of your expectations. When I do that, don't change the language. When I do that, a lot of people want to change it to if I do that, not if. When I do that, will you introduce me to your friends and family and neighbors? What are they going to say? What is almost every single person going to say?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I'd say yes in a heartbeat.
Of course we will. Great. That's it. So you asked. Now the job's done. They're happy. They've given you the final check. Now you're going to ask them. First off, you want to ask them, hey, did you receive a 5-star experience? Oh yeah, we did. This was great. Awesome. So we do this thing. We call it the 90-second review. So we show people how to get a review right there on the spot within 90 seconds. Google 5-star Google review. But beyond that, now for referrals, is now you're going to remind them about that conversation. So we exceeded all of your expectations. Great. Who can you introduce me that might be interested in having their backyard transformed the way that yours did? Now, what's the first thing people are going to say? What's immediately when you say that, what are people going to say?
Well, yeah.
Generally, they're going to say, you might, because you're a nice guy. But generally what people are going to say, oh, well, I don't know anybody right now. And then that's it. That shuts down the conversation. And what people have to remember about that is that's just an automatic reaction. I can't think of anybody right now. Now, if you really want to get a referral out of these people, if you really are serious, this goes back to what we talked about in the previous episode. If you're really serious about being profitable, about building a great company, you're going to have to do things that are uncomfortable. You're going to have to become somebody. You're going to have to become somebody that you weren't before. And now you're going to become somebody that does pattern interrupts. And you're going to say, yeah, I get that. But any of your neighbors come by and were they curious about what's going on here? Did your family come by? Did anybody in your family ask you about what's going on here? Yeah, you want to keep going? What about your coworkers? Did you tell any of your coworkers what you were doing here? Do you see the pattern interrupt there? Now you get them starting to think about people. You get them to start thinking about, well, yeah, man, Charlie from down the street was here every couple of days asking, what's going on? How are these guys doing? What? Really, Charlie? Okay, Charlie was over there. Can you introduce me to him? I'm just gonna introduce myself. I'm gonna shake his hand and say, hey, this is what we do, and I'd love to talk to you about your job. We're not gonna harass them. We're not gonna call them 1,000 times. But it's getting out there and being proactive. It's all part of the same formula. It's going out and getting what you want.
Well, that's great. I mean, you have to be proactive. You have to be the one running. You're either going to be a feeder in your life, in your business, or you're going to be a receiver. And a receiver sits back and lets things try to happen. Maybe I'll sit in my office, no leads. Let's bitch at the marketing department, or he's going to go out and make something happen.
Yeah.
Right. He's going to change everything.
And again, look at how it goes back to what we talked about previously about taking responsibility.
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So if you really want to be successful, if you really want to build a business that's going to work for you, that's going to work and make money while you're away on vacation or hunting or doing whatever the hell you like to do, well, guess what?
Yep.
You
got
to take responsibility.
You do. And shift what you're doing for sure. Well, Brian, this is amazing. And I always enjoy talking to you for sure. You really have a nice way of unpacking things. So today we focused on how to define and attract your ideal clients to maximize profit. Also, effective, marketing strategies specifically suited for our industry, contractors. You talked a lot about doing some face to face, like door hangers and knocking on doors and saying, "Hey, we're going to be in your area." I know a lot of listeners have heard that 1,000 times, but try it. Think about it, because if everyone bought basically the same, these subdivisions are all very similar, right? So they all spent $1 million on a house, or even 500,000 on a house. It means they have means, right? And they don't want to be the dirty, nasty looking house on the block. They want to be the nicest house, right? If that's the case, then it's like, okay, they have similar motivations. Then they might have different needs, but there's a high probability they could say yes to you. So if you introduce yourself throughout without any kind of selling, simply to say, "Hey, we're here. If you need anything, let us know." To your point, you mentioned a lot of different options. All of a sudden they become aware of who you are. And then they talk to the homeowner. How did it go? They always want the backstory. And when they say, "Man, it was a 5-star experience," they're going to be like, "Well, why wouldn't I say, hey, at least give them a shot," right? Gives them an opportunity. So it's powerful stuff right in there. So if you've heard that 1,000 times, I challenge you to rethink your opinion on that, and then dig deeper into themselves and figure out why you haven't done it yet. That could be some of that mindset stuff we talked about last week. Anyway, and then also the importance of consistently showing up, and the branding and all that stuff, making sure that you're talking to the right people, that you got the right message, and that will change everything. So Brian, I appreciate you on here for us, with us this week, and some great nuggets dropped there. And next week, he's going to be back, and we're going to talk about the mechanics of profit. We're going to jump into mastering P&Ls, job costing, and margins for contracting businesses. Because you know what? If we're out there slugging it out every single day in the trenches, every single day, and at the end of the year, you look at your numbers, your profit and loss, and you say, "Oh, we got money in the profit and loss," but you go to your bank account and it's zero. What the hell did you do it for? You robbed your family an entire years of your time to have nothing to show for it at the end. How does that feel? It sucks. Been there. Right? And it's like, all right, now, thing is, that was an old story. It's time to rewrite that story. That's something we're going to jump into next week. So Brian, thanks for coming on, and I can't wait to talk next week about that.
My pleasure. Thanks, Joshua.